a wonderful job to get into. We're going to put a new outside tap on the side of the house. This side of the house down here has no tap, or around the back has no tap. So we wanted to put some water here so we can be watering the gardens and accessing water on this side. What we do have on this side is our hot water service and solar system. So of course, there's cold water coming in for this to service it. So the plan is, this here is where the cold water comes in, and very conveniently it's got a tap so we can turn it off at that point. And it then comes and runs up here. This is to the over temperature valve where the cold water runs up, and this down here is where it comes into the hot water service. So from any of these points we want to then tap off. So we've got ourselves some copper pipe. You'll see there's a little T-piece. We're just working out where we're going to put that T-piece. And with copper pipe, it's really quite an interesting thing to join and work with. You do need some very specific tools. You can cut copper pipe with a hacksaw. There is also a special little tool that you can spin around it, but I'm not going to have much room to use one of those, so I'm just going to cut with a hacksaw. The one piece of equipment I don't have that I may have to go and get is a spring. You can slide a spring over copper pipe and then bend it. You see these nice rounded bends here and here in the pipe? That's achieved. This copper pipe would normally kink and carry on if you try to do a tight bend. So that's achieved by sliding a spring over the top and then bending the pipe, and it holds its round shape when you do that. But I'll show you how these compression fittings work. Here, these guys here spin off. This needs to go up over the copper pipe. Here we go. So that slides up over the top. And then, as you can see, that little rounded part on here goes inside the pipe, and then the nut comes down and it seals the copper against there, and it provides an excellent thread that stays for years. What you need to do though is flare the end of this. Now there's a few different flaring tools. The one I have is a nice basic one, and this works for half-inch pipe or the 3 different sizes of pipe here. And again, the flaring tool, which bit of pipe it goes into depends on where it hits that flaring tool. So the procedure is that we actually undo these here. Sorry about the one-handed bit. And you can see the shape that's on this clamp there, that rounded shape. So that slides through, and let's try the middle one. Yeah, I believe it's going to be the middle one. We have it just out a little bit like that, and then we do this down nice and tight on both sides. So I'll put a link to all these tools in the description. So if you're going to have a go at this job and put in a tap and work with some copper. Now for water, I think it's okay for a handyman to have a go. For gas, I wouldn't recommend it. I would get a licensed plumber in before you go working with gas in half-inch copper pipe. So here we go, that's all set up. You get that nice and tight, and then we simply put that in the end there and hold this and hit it with a hammer and flare that piece there. So we've got that realigned. I had it sticking out a little bit too much before. That's better now. So we put this part in. Now if you can get that against something solid, that's better. But I'm going to hold this. Can you hit it now? Not too hard. That's it. Let's have a look. Take that out for me. Okay. Yeah, see that the little bit of not round has gone and it started to shape up nicely. Go again and hit it a bit harder. A few more and a bit harder. Okay, that'll do. Yeah, look at that. That's nicely flared now. You can see the shape on it. Let me take this off. And slide that out of the way. Where'd it go? There it is. You can see a beautiful flared end. Now, when that comes on, you can see the flared end sits on there. When we take this off, the lock nut most important that you put that lock nut on before you flare it, otherwise you've got to chop it and start again. The lock nut will pull up there, and that will seal watertight. So there it is, basic 101. You can flare it a bit more than that, but you've got to make sure you don't flare it so much that it gets in the way of the thread on the lock nut here. That's a basic 101 of how to prepare the end of a pipe to flare it. With the tap we've bought, it has a flared end, so we put that links to all of these products, all different taps. Whoop. Now this one has what's called an olive inside of it. So here's the tap, and the olive sits in there, and then the flared pipe comes up on that, and then the lock nut comes and holds the whole lot together, and again that seals nice and watertight. So that's how we're going to connect the pipe up to the tap. And the tap, we've chosen this half brick here. We're going to mount him right there. We've got a drain here in a beautiful convenient location. So that's where our tap's going to be. So copper pipe down, we're going to run it along just against the house there. Through, and when it connects, that'll bring that cold water down, and we'll have ourselves an outside tap. So the copper pipe comes in a coil like this. When you go to the hardware shop, if you go there, or I will put links up at different places you can get it posted to you, the stuff that comes in a coil is the soft stuff that you can use the flaring tool on, open up and use in these. There's also straight stuff, but the straight stuff often is so hard you can't use a flaring tool on it. It's a different type. This is annealed copper, so it says here. So it's soft, and we're bending this out and straightening it out, getting it so it'll disappear. But the straight stuff is the stuff that doesn't use these compression joints and the flaring. It actually gets welded into place. So that's the stuff you need a plumber for if you want to do that. But we're limited to this stuff to use the compression joints. And so this pipe, it's really quite tough, but it's also quite malleable. Now the thing to remember with metal is that the more times you bend it, the tougher it gets. So try to bend it as little as possible. And this here, it's a bit of an awkward length actually, but we're going to come here and then we're going to curve up, and here's our brick here where we're going to mount it. That we bought only came in 3 meters or 18 meter lengths. So 3 meters was just a bit too short. We bought a couple, so that's okay. It's not expensive for a joiner. But where the joint is going to come, like I showed, it's right at that curve coming to this brick here. So what I've done, I've just cut the pipe back a bit. I've tried to make it a length which is usable for later, but also so this joint gets back out of the way. I'll put the joiner back here so it stays out of ground, and then when we come up here, there'll just be a nice gentle curve which will then come up pretty vertically to that brick, just keeping it all nice and neat. And one little trick I'm going to do, I'm actually going to attach all the copper and attach the tap on, and then drill the holes and put the brick in, because otherwise if you don't get it quite precise, you end up pulling your copper pipe up out of the ground, and it just gets messy. So if you leave the drilling of the holes and mounting of the tap until you've got everything in, then it'll all sit nice. I've flared the joint. That's just a few good old hits, and it's ready, and that'll seal up beautifully. Copper seals really nicely. And again, I did remember to put the nut on before I flared it. Then coming back here, you'll see that I've actually bent it around the concrete slab. So that'll just sit down nice, and just at this point, take a bit of time, get it neat, and you'll end up with a much better finished job. So now we'll join these two bits. It has just an end like that, and one of these standard caps on the top. And again, it has an olive. So you'll have pipe coming through here with a flare on it. So that olive will end up getting squashed tight, so the pipe gets sealed in there. And from the other direction on the nut, onto the olive, the other pipe gets sealed onto there, so that'll give the join. So I've got the nut on that end, so the olive's going to go there, and that will pull up when I've got the other piece of pipe through with a flare in it, and that'll join. So that there is how you join two pieces of copper pipe. If you've been digging in the ground and broken a copper pipe, just a length of copper pipe and a couple of these joiners, is you can actually repair it. We've bent this all up, we've got the tape and bent it to where we want it and measured it. So I'm just going to show you cutting the pipe just using a hacksaw, and I do find it with a little bit of a blunter hacksaw, makes it a little bit easier. And I've got my mark here. And what I do with the fingernail when you're cutting something like this, just sit it on your nail like that and then cut. And then once you've started, you can cut it through. And copper pipe isn't hard to cut. You see a few strokes and we're through like that. If you've got a really sharp hacksaw, it can tend to catch a lot more. It's going to be a real awkward one. There we go. And there's our cut. Now, if you're wearing gloves, you can just knock that up a little bit to smooth it off. You don't want it coming into new taps and things, so just smooth those burrs off and then it's ready to flare up and join. Okay, so now you see we've got the two flared ends here.